Oral questions by members.
Member Peace River North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday I hosted a town hall with hundreds of parents and teachers from across the province, and they all had one thing in common, and that was anxiety. As if the pandemic wasn't stressful enough already, now they have to deal with a government that seems to be making things worse because they're incapable of coming up with a feasible plan for the back to school. The availability of a hybrid model with teaching for students both online and in the classroom was just one area of confusion that we heard yesterday from parents. To the Minister of Education, will online learning options be available to families as they were in June?
Minister of Education.
Thank you to the member for the question, Mr. Speaker. And as the member well knows, our guidelines that we released on July 29th, which were an update of the plan that we released earlier in the spring, are comprehensive. They were developed by the BC Centre for Disease Control. They were developed under the guidance and direction of Dr. Bonnie Henry and the Provincial Health Office. They were also done in consultation with every leading organization and representation from all the professions that deliver education in British Columbia. We have had the goal to welcome kids back safely this September to in-class instruction for many months now. There has been a lot of detailed planning going on in every part of the province. We have education teams on the ground in communities right around British Columbia working within the guidelines that were released by the BC CDC and the Ministry of Education. And I would ask the member to talk to people like his superintendent in his own school district, to talk about the confidence about how they will be working with their learning teams to welcome families and kids safely back into school, to orient staff on the guidelines, to redesign schools because it will not look as it did before this pandemic. It has to be safe. It has to meet the very stringent tests of the guidelines. And look, as we've explained, districts around the province are offering the same kinds of choices and options to parents and families that they always do. There is a robust distributed learning programs around British Columbia. There are 56 of them that are delivered by the public education system. There are other choices that parents can access as well. And district leaders and learning teams around British Columbia are working on exactly that. They're working on how to accommodate families because not every family situation is the same. And that's the hard work that's happening by the dedicated professionals around British Columbia right now. They're beginning to communicate elements and information that's important to parents and kids and to their staff as we speak. You've seen lots of information coming out in different districts right now. They're required to submit their plans to the ministry and have those approved. Those will be approved and posted later this month. And districts are working with families to make sure that everybody has access to a safe education come this September.
Member Peace River North on a supplemental.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. That was a lot of rambling with zero response to my question, actually. This would have been a lot simpler. This would have been a lot simpler for the ministry if they had actually released a real plan on the 29th of July, which didn't happen. And one of the callers last night, and I cannot remember the gentleman's name, was just as beside himself that the government would release a plan that actually wasn't a plan. And now we're dealing with all the problems that we have today. On August 10th, the minister said that we want to have a common approach and proceed as an entire school system to have consistency, end quote. Yet today he announced that some schools will have a hybrid learning and some will not. There's no consistency from one day to the next. There's always a new something coming along. When is the minister going to show some leadership? When is the minister going to take responsibility and give parents clear answers? Parents need to plan. They need to arrange childcare. They need to arrange after-school care. Parents need to know if their children will have the option of a hybrid system, because finding all this out on August 26th is too late. So I ask the question again, will parents have the option of a hybrid learning system?
Minister of Education.
Well, let me try and say this as delicately as I can to the member. I would suggest that he read the BC CDC guidelines that were issued July 29th, because there is a long discussion about exactly where hybrid learning systems are contemplated. He may wish to review the superintendent of Surrey today, who began to share some of their learning plans about delivering hybrid education at the senior secondary level. That is outlined by the document that was released by Dr. Bonnie Henry and myself. That was based on input from school and education leaders around the province. So this is not new. He should familiarize himself with the plan before he attacks it, quite frankly, because we have updated a plan that was successful in June to do what no other province did, which was to reopen schools around British Columbia. That's been updated to allow for the return to in-class instruction. And there are flexibilities within this plan that are designed from a public health perspective and a learning perspective. They're at the core of that document and the plans that districts are working under right now.
Member North Vancouver Seymour.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, these types of answers that we're getting from this minister are exactly the problem that these parents have with the non-plan. Confusion from this government is making things worse, and today it's even worse. And it's driving parents crazy with worry. Every day there's a new announcement, which just adds to the confusion, stress, and anxiety of parents, students, as well as teachers. Ashley Johnson from Port Coquitlam told us, and I quote, "I'm a mom of 2 kids. My father has had cancer twice. So by sending my kids back to school, I'm cutting off my family support, which I need, as I am a single parent trying to work. I'm really confused. I'm really conflicted. I'm up a lot of the night," end quote. So to the minister again, how are children like Ashley's, who have immune-compromised extended family members, supposed to safely participate in school?
Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Maybe let me deal with off the top. The member characterized a new announcement every day. There has been one since July 29th, and that was the one that was done in full consultation with the steering committee that's guiding the safe return to BC schools, and that was done by me today. And it was based on the logistics around implementing a safe return to school, and it was done with the consultation and advice with every major stakeholder in the BC education system. We said that these guidelines are out there for suggestion. We have a steering committee that is dynamic and working on a daily basis with these plans. We have learning teams around the province, including that member's district, working within those guidelines to communicate information on a timely basis to parents. Now, specifically to the concerns of her constituent, I presume, around the request to have an accommodation of some kind. We understand that families do have different situations. Some of them have immunocompromised family members. And I would urge, and Dr. Bonnie Henry and I urged this on July 29th, that families in that situation should be working with their local physician and working with principals and vice principals to have an accommodation and a learning plan that works for that student and for that family. That's something that is available in a non-pandemic time, but it's critically important at this time as we safely restart schools in September. And that's exactly what is available now for families that are considering what their options are for September to be able to do.
Member North Vancouver Seymour on a supplemental.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Minister, hundreds of parents attended the town hall last night with my colleague. They are worried. They are confused. They're frustrated. They've got anxiety, that on top of the pandemic. And to make things even more stressful for Ashley, her daughter is in a cross-catchment school due to daycare, and she is worried that she will lose her placement if there isn't virtual instruction available from that school. Ashley said, and I quote, "I don't know when I'm going back to work, and I don't know why I would have to give up that spot until I feel it's safe to do so at her daycare and school. But that is potentially what I'm looking at," end quote. So my question again to the minister, when will this minister take responsibility, alleviate the stress and worry that these parents and children have, and show some leadership and come up with a clear plan that everybody understands that works for families like Ashley's?
Minister of Education.
Mr. Speaker, we have a plan, and I know the opposition was able to be briefed in detail about it by Dr. Bonnie Henry herself last week. So I hope the information that was relayed on the venue that she described yesterday did exactly that and gave accurate information. The member will know that school boards are vital partners of the education system. That's where school services are delivered. Family connections are with their local school. And there are a lot of parents who, yes, they're looking for information about where their kid will be placed and what options they want to make for their family. And they are getting that information from school districts, and those plans are being developed now. We've given the types of timelines and flexibilities for districts to be able to provide the services that their families need. School districts are in the business of serving families and kids. They want to keep families who have different circumstances and different situations connected to their school system and connected to their local school in whatever way they can, and provide those kinds of options that the member has described. And that's what's happening on the ground in the BC school system.
House Leader, third party.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. The Minister for Energy and Mines has repeatedly said that the BC Liberals pushed Site C past the point of no return, and that his government had no choice but to keep building this dam. This is inaccurate. We all know that Site C was not past the point of no return when the NDP took office. It was this government that decided, in spite of the evidence, to proceed with the project. In 2017, the BC Utilities Commission found that we could cancel Site C and replace the electricity with renewables, including wind and solar, at the same or lower cost to British Columbians. And now, 3 years later, Site C is facing even more massive cost overruns and delays than were predicted. My question is to the Minister of Energy, Mines and Petroleum Resources. The Minister has said that he doesn't know how high the costs are going to go, and yet he's still saying that Site C is past the point of no return. How can this be when we don't even know how deep the fiscal hole will be? Is there a price tag that will make the government walk away?
Minister, Energy, Mines and Petroleum Resources.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and thank the House Leader of the third party for her question. The old government was indeed and in fact committed to pushing this project past the point of no return. They said so explicitly. They also refused to let the BC Utilities Commission review Site C before they recklessly signed off on it. We asked the BCUC to conduct a review of the project when we formed government, and we carefully considered their report. And as we said at the time, our government was forced to make a decision looking forward, not backwards. We've been clear that Site C is not a project we would have started, but we weren't prepared to ask British Columbians to immediately take on $4 billion in debt with nothing in return. This would have affected badly needed investments in schools, hospitals, and other important infrastructure. We have been left to manage the project in the best interests of British Columbians, and this is what we will continue to do. We knew there were cost pressures and risks on the Site C project when we formed government. The COVID-19 pandemic has dramatically added to these challenges. In March, BC Hydro significantly scaled down the project and focused only on essential work and meeting critical milestones. This was done in line with the advice from the provincial health officer to ensure the safety both of workers and of communities. This approach has ensured that we are on track to achieve river diversion, a key step in constructing a project this fall. While this work is underway, BC Hydro will conduct their rebaselining analysis of the project. And Mr. Milburn will work with BC Hydro and the Project Assurance Board to review the measures the project has in place. He will provide an important role in examining the project and provide me and our government with independent advice and a fresh perspective.
House Leader, third party on a supplemental.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. And so let's step back and assess this situation. The Minister will not provide a price tag. And the bad news from Site C continues to pile up. Tension cracks, landslides, ongoing problems with the diversion tunnels. And the latest BC Hydro report tells us even more of the geotechnical problems. There's a stability problem under the foundations for the powerhouse, the spillways, and the dam itself, and nobody knows what it will take or how much it will cost to fix. And today, the CCPA reported, according to federal data, over 10,000 fracking-related earthquakes have happened in the Peace River region in a space of 2 years, where Site C sits, further endangering this project. Government's financial capacity will be strained for years to come due to COVID-19, and yet this government wants to forge ahead and sink unlimited money into this project instead of helping British Columbians. It's time to act on the calls for responsible governance. It's time to take responsibility for their actions. It's time to cancel Site C. My question for you, Honourable Speaker, is to the Minister of Energy, Mines and Petroleum Resources. Site C is this government's responsibilities and nobody else's. With all of these challenges mounting, how can this government justify forging ahead?
Minister, Energy, Mines and Petroleum Resources.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and thank the member for her question. The issue of cost and schedule is a topic that I am deeply concerned about after the reports that were released weeks ago. And that's the reason why I've asked Peter Milburn, in his role as special advisor, to work with BC Hydro. And I think it's important when we look back at Site C project, when we first formed government in 2017, it was facing cost pressures and risks then. These have worsened in large part due to the global COVID-19 pandemic. And as I've said, BC Hydro is undertaking a rebaselining analysis of the project. This includes reviewing the cost and time required to complete the main work for the project. But that work is not yet complete. That will help when we get it. It will help our government understand the true impact the pandemic has had on the budget. And I expect to be able to provide an update on cost projections later this fall. The member also mentions, if I might, Mr. Speaker, the projects, the issues raised in a recent report released today. BC Hydro works closely with seismic hazard specialists and researchers to review the ground motion data in the region. It's important to remember that when we first formed government, we knew British Columbians had concerns about hydraulic fracturing. That's why we asked an independent scientific panel to look at the role of hydraulic fracturing and how it relates to seismic events, impacts on water quality, and fugitive methane emissions. Last spring, the panel provided their report to our government, and I'm pleased to say we've already implemented a number of their recommendations. For example, we've introduced new mapping zones that are likely to experience greater ground motion from seismic events. We will continue to work hard on implementing these recommendations as well.
Member Richmond Queensborough.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My questions are for the Minister of Citizen Services. Was the Provincial Health Services Authority aware NTT Data would be using foreign employees, and did the PHSA authorize the use of foreign employees prior to this occurring?
Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker. The member continues to make assertions not supported by the facts. He's made them for a number of days now. He made an allegation of illegal activity, which was false, which is demonstrated to be false, and yet he continues on, Honourable Speaker, and I think he owes an apology to a growing list of people. Yesterday, for example, he attacked, he claimed the activities of a person in India were contrary to the laws of British Columbia. And of course, we've reviewed that because people in the Ministry of Health have nothing better to do than to follow up on the reckless and false allegations of the member. And here's what we found, Honourable Speaker, that this individual was not providing direct support for service desk tickets. So no access to clinical systems, no access to remotely view screens or systems, and no access to private medical or personal information. So the member now has made false claims on multiple continents, and I think we can move off this file.
Member Richmond Queensborough on a supplemental.
I want to thank the minister not responsible for citizen services for once again ignoring my question. Once again, a question to the Minister of Citizen Services. Has any health authority in BC, upon learning about NTT Data's move to use foreign employees, asked the service provider to cease and desist?
Minister of Health.
Honourable Speaker, the member has made repeated false claims. He refuses to apologize for claims that have been demonstrated to be false. And it's hard to know where to go from there. He has specifically asserted that information, personal health information of British Columbians went outside the province. That is false. It is totally false. And yet he continues to make the assertion. He's made the assertion that people, the Provincial Health Services Authority, the Ministry of Health, and others have engaged in illegal and unethical activities. He's made that on the record, and it is false. And the time has come, I think, Honourable Speaker. Time has come for the member simply to apologize to the people of BC for wasting the time of this legislature and refusing, by the way, to inform himself as to the realities of this contract. I've repeatedly offered him briefings on said subject. He refuses because he's not interested in the facts. He's only interested in some smear campaign in the legislature based on no evidence and no facts.
Member Abbotsford West.
Well, thanks, Mr. Speaker. Maybe the time has come for a minister who is simply interested in sidestepping this issue to get out of the way and allow the minister whose statutory responsibility is to protect the privacy of British Columbians to indicate how she has been protecting the privacy of British Columbians. I'll ignore the insults from the Minister of Health, who continues to insult the opposition for doing its job in ensuring that the government is doing its job in protecting the privacy of British Columbians. It's an important question. It's a question. I'll ask it again. Has any health authority in British Columbia, upon learning that NTT Data was using foreign personnel to fulfill its contractual obligations in BC, has any health authority in British Columbia demanded that NTT cease and desist from that activity?
Minister of Health.
Well, Honourable Speaker, I have no interest, as the member knows, in insulting the opposition. What I find, frankly, unacceptable is repeated false claims. 2 days ago, the member and the member for Richmond Queensborough made allegations of illegal activities. They're not making those today because they know they're false, Honourable Speaker, and yet they don't apologize. And this is, I think, conduct that is reflects them. So it is their conduct that I find unacceptable. It's their conduct of making smears without foundation and without evidence, Honourable Speaker. Honourable Speaker, if there was a breach, Honourable Speaker, of the health information of British Columbians, there would be an obligation to report that to the Office of the Information and Privacy Commissioner. But since there's been no breach, Honourable Speaker, there's been no report, and there's no evidence of such a breach. So the very things the member has been saying in the last 2 days, is he saying that he's continuing to make those specific allegations, even though they have been proven to be false? Is he going to continue to do that in this legislature? Are we going to continue to have day after day of this, where members make claims that are untrue, and then they don't come back and apologize when they're established to be true? If the member thinks that that's appropriate behavior, or if he feels insulted by me commenting on it, then I'm afraid that's too bad.
Member Abbotsford West on a supplemental.
Well, what I am going to do, what the member for Queensborough and Richmond is going to do, what every member of the opposition is going to do, is what members of the government should be doing, and that is protecting the privacy interests of British Columbians. On July 29th of this year, NTT Data Services began providing desktop management services, workstation support, and 24/7 service desk support to all of the health authorities in British Columbia. They use something called Active Directory Domain Services. They're used to provide this support, which I am told involves a single log-on for access to the management of users, computers, and other objects within our health information network domain. This work, we know as a fact, was carried out by staff located outside of the country in the United States and India, Mr. Speaker, exposing the private medical records of British Columbians to foreign access. In a few moments, I will, on behalf of the opposition, the member for Richmond, Queensborough, table the letter that is being sent to the Privacy Commissioner to ask for a formal investigation to this matter. But I'll give the ministers, the government, anyone in the government, one last opportunity to do the right thing and confirm, and I'll ask this. Has anyone in this government, confronted by the facts as we know them to be, provided that information to the Privacy Commissioner and asked that the Privacy Commissioner conduct an investigation to ensure that the privacy rights, the personal health information of British Columbians were not improperly accessed or exposed to access by people outside of Canada?
Minister of Health.
Well, the member said that we were avoiding the question. I'm not. The allegations made by the member for Richmond, Queens, the allegations made for the member for Abbotsford West are false. They're false. Health information did not go outside the country. There has not been a breach, and therefore there's no need to refer to anything to the Information and Privacy Commissioner. I can't be any more direct than that. The assertions yesterday made by the members are false. And yes, of course, we followed up on them in detail, just in case, Honorable Speaker. The allegations they made on Monday, they made in a press release outside this House, accusing individuals of illegal activity. And that's what the member for Abbotsford West did. But when they're arguing, oh, we feel hurt by the fact that you're calling out our false allegations, remember what they said. And I just find it unbelievable that with no evidence, with no information, they're not even defending, Honorable Speaker, what they asserted on Monday and Tuesday today in this House. They're not even defending it, Honorable Speaker. I think that it's fair to say, Honorable Speaker, that this has been a complete and utter waste of time. What might be a better use of time, because there are important issues related to contracts and health information, is for the members of the opposition, should they have any interest in the facts, to get briefed. And I've always been willing to offer that to members of the opposition on really any issue within the health area, as members know. I believe every member in this House has a role to play. But when you make a false allegation and it's shown to be false, I think it's time in this House for members of the Liberal Party and maybe the leader of the opposition to stand up and apologize to the people of the Provincial Health Services Authority, the people of NTT Canada, the people in the Ministry of Health, and, if he feels like it, me, Honourable Speaker, for the conduct under his direction this week of his members in this legislature.
Member Coquitlam Burke Mountain.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Instead of fixing the problem of homelessness, the Minister of Housing has made the situation worse. Brian Dobbs owns a business near the former Howard Johnson's Hotel in Vancouver and says he has not heard from BC Housing or the BC government. He's seen things deteriorate drastically. Quote, employees no longer want to work at this location due to unsafe conditions, cars vandalized, and hotel residents aggressively coming into our establishment and threatening staff, end quote. Brian and his employees have to deal with this every single day. To the Minister of Housing, when will she stop making the situation worse and start providing proper support for everyone?
Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And we all can appreciate how COVID has created stress for everybody. It's created stress for families. It's created stress for business owners. I'm not sure how to keep things going because of the impact on our economy. It's also created stress for housing providers and for shelters and for homeless people. It's created stress right across the spectrum. And we have a choice, Honourable Speaker. We have a choice of either housing people where they can get supports, where they can rest their head, where they can have access to people who can make sure that they are eating properly, taking medication, accessing health appointments, and getting a better grip on their lives. Or, Honorable Speaker, the other choice was to leave people without any supports, to leave people without a roof over their head, to leave people without any decent meals. And that, to me, Honorable Speaker, was really the choice that was before us as a government. COVID has absolutely had impact on everybody, and we are doing our very best to make sure that we could provide some supports for those that are most vulnerable in our communities.
The bill ends question period.